did this. No, that's worse. I don't know. I'm going to fix this lighting eventually.
Do you see what I did to the house?
I saw you took down the clothesline. Okay. We're on Genesis chapter 24. Okay. So we finished the death and burial of Sarah. So we're now starting to turn toward Isaac's story. But Isaac is still a member of Jacob's household without a family of his own. He's not married yet. But we see how Abraham does not want Isaac to take as a wife a member of the pagan Canaanite tribes. There are still members of Abraham's household, his extended family, that know the Lord. And so he wants a wife of Isaac from his extended family so that he does not have a pagan wife. Abraham was old and well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had, so this would be like his chief steward. Abraham, being old, couldn't himself manage his entire household, so he, as most people did in those days, they had stewards that were primarily in charge of all their things. He said, put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred and take a wife for my son Isaac. And so you have the placing of the hand under the thigh is a euphemism for this, which is how men made vows in those days. You're placing it's symbolic of placing it's not just a matter of virility, but your whole life and the life of your descendants into that person's hands. But so that's the oath that was taken. So this has the force of law, is the point. So it's a contract and it's an oath swearing with the force of law that you will not allow my son Isaac to have a Canaanite wife. So the servant said to him, perhaps the woman will not be willing to follow me to this land. Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came? So the point being, I could go find a woman, but maybe she doesn't want to come with me. I mean, think about it. Someone comes from a far land, claims to be, the steward of your kindred, and says, I want you to come back and marry my master's son. Will you leave with me? Today we'd say, I don't even know him. What are you talking about? Abraham said to him, see to it that you do not take my son back there. In other words, maybe she won't come. Which should show you something, that a lot of the ideas that modern man has about women in the Bible are wrong. It's not as if Rebecca would have been forced and sold off in marriage. The women actually always consented. It was, and yes, in many cases, they had a far greater and better understanding of marriage as being a duty. Both men and women had this understanding back then, but it wasn't as if women were chattel and slaves like people try to portray the Bible today. And so his point was, well, if she's not willing to come, I can't make her come. And so then obviously my only choice would be to take Isaac back to that country. But of course, what does God want? Abraham knows that no, it is in this land that God will establish Israel as his people. It is in this land of Canaan that God will cause the children of Abraham to be a nation, and Abraham to be a father of many nations. You can't send Isaac back. He'll probably just settle down and remain there. And so, no, you cannot take my son back there. the Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife from my son from there. Abraham is speaking in certain faith here. I know full well that the Lord is going to establish me in this land and my offspring in this land, and he absolutely does not want me marrying into the pagan tribes to do it. This is where Isaac must receive a wife from. God has already given me a promise. God's going to fulfill it. Don't worry, he's telling his servant. God's angel is going to go before you. He's going to set all this right, so have no fear. It says, but if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. And so Abraham is certain that God is going to keep his promise, and yet Abraham, because he's the one commanding, and he doesn't have a specific word of God, is not going to presume upon the Lord. If the Lord has some other means of keeping his promise, then fine. So if the woman will not come, you're free from your oath, but do not take Isaac there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter. And then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed. And so this is means of, this is part of the whole bridal customs of those days. He's bringing a dowry with him. The servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. Okay, Mesopotamia, Nahor, this is, remember, where they had traveled from originally. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening and the time when women go out to draw water. Now you see an example of how the faith of Abraham was shared by his whole household. And he said, O Lord, my God, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love, mercy to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall answer, drink, and I will also water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. And so, the servant doesn't want to just guess who this woman is supposed to be. Abraham is certain that God is going to so arrange things that there is a wife for Isaac in Nahor among his kindred. And so the servant says, Abraham is certain, God is faithful. I'm not going to guess. Lord, let it be this way so that I may know for certain that this is the one whom I am to ask, that you have chosen. Before he had finished speaking, while he was still speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. So, why does it say the wife of Milcah? Very likely because Nahor had more than one wife, and so this is identifying which specific wife she was the daughter of. Came out to her with her water jar on her shoulder. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known, in other words, a virgin. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. And so the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. That's no small thing to do. Remember, camels after a journey are very thirsty. They're going to drink a lot. So she's going to have all that. She's offering to do quite a good deed for him. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all of his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. In other words, is she going to finish doing this very thing? And when the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing a half shekel and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels. A shekel is about 11 grams. So 10 gold shekels is about 5 pounds. And said, "Please tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for me to spend the night?" So at this point, he doesn't even know if she's part of his kindred. What's he going to say? Well, if she did this thing, but she's not of Abraham's kindred, he's going to keep looking. She said to him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." She added, "So I'm the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah." Okay, I had that wrong. So she's like the granddaughter of Nahor. She added, "We have plenty of both straw and fodder and room to spend the night." And the man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord and said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and faithfulness toward my master. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman." And then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Okay, so while he's still speaking, so it reminds you of God's promise that before the words even left your mouth, he's already sending the answer to the prayer. And of course, before he started praying, Rebecca was already journeying on the way to the well. And she did exactly what the servant had asked the Lord to have her do. And then the fact that it was indeed the kinsman of Abraham, his servant rejoiced that God had fulfilled his promise and remained merciful to Abraham. The word steadfast love you will see in the ESV repeatedly. In the King James, it's translated mercy. However, our English understanding of mercy doesn't always get at what the concept in Hebrew is. And so I'm just mentioning this here. So when you see the phrase steadfast love, that's the Hebrew word chesed. It's the same as the word mercy in other English Bibles. But it's showing you that the idea behind God's mercy is his constant love. In other words, it's steadfast, it doesn't cease, and it has behind it the idea of grace. It is unmerited kindness of God, but it's constant. Okay.
I think it would be quite interesting to see what these bracelets were like. These
I would-
must have been like full arm.
It would something like
Gold's
yeah,
heavy.
you gotta remember,
5
yeah,
pounds pretty quick.
gold is like lead. It's almost as heavy as
All
lead.
you need is like a thick. It was probably the clasp, like over your wrist,
Yeah.
style like that.
Talking exercise weights there though.
Yeah.
That might have been 2.5 pounds on each side though too. So I'm not sure. All right. When the camels had finished drinking, okay, so verse 29. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. And so Laban is another grandson of Nahor. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. As soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arm and heard the words of Rebekah his sister, "Thus the man spoke to me," he went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, "Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels." So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels and gave straw and fodder to the camels, and there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat, but he said, "I will not eat until I have said what I have to say." And he said, "Speak on." So, by the way, there's already the implication when he gave the gifts to Rebekah what his intentions were. So that's already they already have that understanding, because it was clearly a dowry type of a gift that had been given. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old, and to him he has given all that he has. Of course, Isaac inherits everything of Abraham's. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell. But you shall go to my father's house and to my clan, and take a wife there for my son. I said to my master, perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said to me, the Lord before whom I have walked will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son from my clan and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. And I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels also, let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. And before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water. So it wasn't a well, it's a spring. And I said to her, please let me drink. And she quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will give your camels drink also. And so I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. So in later English translations, you'll see them constantly say earring. And in almost every case, it's a nose ring, not an earring. Yeah, so like the nose rings that we see today. So sometimes even in the middle, but I'm not sure. I think more likely it's nose rings on the side. Okay, and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me. And if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. And so Abraham's servant carefully lays out the entire story because, of course, he wants to make it plain that he wasn't just, being presumptuous here, that God had led him to Rebekah so that they would realize that the hand of the Lord was in this. And, of course, in so realizing, he's hoping that not only they, but she herself would be more willing. And so then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing has come from the Lord. Hey, you. We cannot speak to you, bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard these words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord. In other words, the only ones who could give her away in marriage have now given their consent to do so. And the servant brought out jewelry of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. So there's her dowry. He also gave to her brothers and to her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that, she may go. So this is not Nahor. This is not Bethuel. This is Laban, her brother, and then Milcah, her mother. Or not Milcah, but her mother. I don't know if we're given her mother's name. Let her stay in 10 days. But he said to them, do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master. They said, let us call the young woman and ask her. And they called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will go." So they sent away Rebekah their sister and her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him." So her, they sent away Rebekah their sister. So Laban is part of this blessing. They're giving their blessing upon her, and in so doing, confirming the Lord's blessing. Because now through Rebekah would be the mother of many nations by being the wife of Isaac. Then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from Beer-lahai-roi and was dwelling in the Negev. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes, and he saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes. And when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all of the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Remember, Sarah died briefly before these things. And you notice the simplicity of this. We're not told of any elaborate marriage ceremony because there wasn't any.
Right.
There wasn't any. It was what made the marriage was consent of her parents, of both sides, the promise that they make to one another, and the consummation of the marriage when they became one flesh. That was the full marriage. The legal aspects of it had already been established. So a lot of what you see happening up to this point, a lot of these things in later generations become codified, And so, but the giving of the gifts and whatnot, the dowry gifts, served as a form of contract in marriage. That's why the dowry was important. By giving those gifts, you had a clear, testimony.
It's like your physical representation, where nowadays we have like a license.
Correct. And so the parents of the daughter could not say, "Well, we didn't give our consent," because then the answer is, "Why did you keep the dowry then? You still have it." Because these are the kind of gifts that would remain in the family, and so forth. And the woman herself would then have the gifts themselves that she could use as testimony. Okay.
So something I noticed that you talked about was when it said, and so they sent them away, Rebekah, her maiden, and the servant and his men.
Yeah.
Which interests me because now we know that it wasn't just, like I previously thought that it was just him that went to it, but apparently had.
No, the Bible doesn't. I mean, when you hear about these things, you're hearing about the chief people involved, but they always had a retinue. Especially when you're traveling a long distance and you got multiple camels and you got all this stuff, you need help.
Yeah.
And so, and not only do you need help, you need basically your own bodyguards in a sense too. Whenever you have travel in the old world, it was never alone. If you were alone, you're going to get robbed, right? So you always have a group of people because there's safety in numbers. And then, of course, Rebekah has servants from her parents' household that she brings back with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So wait, Laban is the father of...
Laban is Rebekah's brother.
Right.
Laban is Rebekah's brother, and Laban is the father of Leah and Rachel.
Right.
Yeah. And so
So
later,
Isaac married
Jacob
his cousins. No,
Jacob
married his
is
cousins.
marrying marrying his cousins. Yes. Yeah. You pointed out before, prohibition. The Bible never at any time had a prohibition of cousins marrying, and in fact, any prohibition of cousins marrying dates to the 19th century in the United States. It's pretty much the only place it existed in the world. And some of the states are finally starting to relax it because they're realizing that there's no legitimate reason to forbid it.
Sunshine.
Okay, we're going to stop there.